When this woman decides to go for a trip to the grocery store, she is happy to catch up with someone she knew from her work. But when this Karen starts throwing a tantrum at the friend, Sally decides to do something about it. While out doing his own personal shopping, this man encounters a customer he has previously served at his own workplace. However, she decides that he should be available to help whenever and wherever she wants. What action does she take when he refuses? And our fan-submitted story. This person is beginning their time at college, when it turns out his teacher is one of those entitled people. What does this teacher decide to get the whole class to do? You'll only find out by watching this episode, featuring IDontWorkHereLady. This story was called, Not All Heroes Wear Capes. Full disclosure on this one, this is not my story. This is the story of a very dear friend who I'll call Sally. We have a 24-hour grocery shop in town. This story takes place around 10 PM. Sally likes to shop at night because it means less people to deal with. Sally has anxiety and finds it hard to deal with large crowds. Despite the anxiety, Sally is amazing at her job. She looks after children, and she does it spectacularly well. Sally has worked with kids for a very long time. Needless to say, some of those kids have grown up and are stepping out into the adult world all on their own. But to Sally, no matter how big they get, they will always be her kids. So she is doing her nighttime shop. She's picked up the first few items on her list when she turns the corner, and there, hovering beside the pot noodles, is one of her kids. We'll call him Steve. Sally hasn't seen Steve in almost 4 years. 4 years is a long time for a teen. Steve is definitely not a child anymore. He's around 18 and is stretched to about 7 feet tall. No, 9 feet tall. She didn't measure him, but compared to the little boy she last saw 4 years ago, Steve is now an actual giant and towers over her. But he's still one of her kids. Of course he remembered her and stopped her to say hello. They exchange pleasantries. He tells her he got into the uni course he wanted. She beams with pride. He's a smart boy. They chat for a few moments, but before Sally heads off, she asks if the giant will do her a favor. Would he please grab the noodles on the top shelf so her 5'4" butt doesn't need to do the tiptoe dance? Steve, being the total sweetheart that he is, of course obliges. Noodles in hand, she wishes him well and heads off, leaving him to ponder his flavor choices. Sally is in the next aisle over, trying to decide between brand name or generic crisps. Who knows how long she stood there in silent crisp flavor contemplation, when her attention was torn from the snacks by a yell. "I'll speak to your manager, this is unacceptable!" Now, normally Sally is pretty big on confrontation avoidance. She does not handle it well. Anxiety disorders will do that to you. If there is a way to avoid confrontation, by gum she'll take it. Except when it involves one of her kids. Then the rules change. Under normal circumstances, she'd have taken the screech as her cue to skedaddle. But not today, because that screech had just come from the aisle she had recently vacated. The aisle that she had last seen young Steve. You know where this is going. With trepidation and a growing sense of dread, Sally creeps around the corner, and of course her worst fears are confirmed. The giant Steve is cowering. Cowed before the wrath of the mighty Karen, as she froths at the mouth about whatever slight she's imagined. He's gone from 10 feet tall to 3 feet small. Sally doesn't know what to do. He's one of her kids, and he's under attack. Her maternal instincts are at war with her anxiety disorder. He's one of her kids, but what should she do? She doesn't know what to do. Then Steve gets a word in. 4 words to be precise. 4 words that flick a switch in her brain, because these 4 words have been spoken many times before. And now, thanks to all the stories she has read, Sally knows exactly what to do. "I don't work here," Steve tells the Karen again as she tries to back away. But the Karen doesn't care what he says. She spouts some nonsense. He's going to get fired, she'll show him, etc. and so on. Sally couldn't give me the exact wording because Sally was not listening to the Karen at this point. She's steeling herself for what she's about to do. You have taught her well. Steve clocks her on the approach, his eyes wide, begging for help. Well, help is on the way, kiddo, because anxiety or no anxiety, no one messes with one of Sally's kids. No one. Sally opens her mouth and turns on her playground voice, and as loudly and as clearly as possible, tells the Karen, "I want to speak to your manager." The Karen falters and she turns her attention to Sally, thus releasing Steve from the laser glare. At this point, the details get a little fuzzy. Sally was running on pure adrenaline and doesn't remember exactly what was going on, but it was something along the lines of, "That's a horrible way to speak to a customer. You'll get fired for this. Get me your manager," all in her incredible playground voice. While Sally is projecting nonsense at the Karen, Steve flashes her a befuddled look and she makes a little shooing motion. Steve is a smart kid. Steve shoos. The Karen gawks at her, doing a rather convincing impression of a fish, while Sally gibbers on about Karen's lack of work ethic or something to that effect. By now they have attracted the attention of an actual staff member who is hurrying towards them. Poor Sally has reached her threshold for confrontation. She's sure that Steve has had enough time to make his escape, so before the bewildered staff member can reach her, Sally makes her exit, turning swiftly and scurrying away as fast as her little legs will carry her. The Karen doesn't follow. I'd love to tell you that Sally swaggered out of there like the hero that she is, but anxiety has a way of taking over. Sally dumped her basket by the customer service desk and made a break for it, sans shopping, then cowered in her car for a bit before finding the strength to drive herself home. Sally thinks this part of the story makes it less important, but I think Sally is the hero we all need. I am genuinely in awe of this woman and her courage when it comes to protecting her kids. We're both going shopping together this week. Karens, beware. This time she's bringing backup. I think a lot of people who see these stories don't realize that these people are a lot more common than you might imagine. It's easy to hear these stories and be like, that's pretty crazy, who's actually like that? For some people, it's their friends, family and co-workers and they see them every single day of their lives. Honestly, I think it's only a matter of time until you run into somebody like this. And you might want to be extra careful because on a bad day, that person might be you. It's encouraging to see the sense of loyalty Sally had for her kids. I mean, it was years later and the guy was so much taller than her. And she had anxiety problems, and yet despite all that, she still felt a need to defend him. I think that's pretty cool, and if you can find people like that in your life, try and hold on to them. This story was called, "Lady Tried to Get Me Fired for Not Helping Her at Another Store." I work at an electronics store. In this store, we have a customer that up until this point has been a blast to help. I've been helping this lady multiple times, and she has never given me any issues. One time I was out shopping for groceries for a party, and I was kinda busy. This is a big store that just happens to have an electronic department. The lady I've been helping multiple times was in the store shopping for electronics. When I walked by, she noticed me. She waved me over. She then asked me which of these phones she should get. As I said, I was kinda busy, so I kindly said, "I'm sorry ma'am, but I don't work here. But there's an employee over there, and I'm sure he'll be more than happy to help you." She did not accept this answer.
"I know where you work, and I know you're good at all this electronic stuff, and it should not be a big hassle for you to help me."
This kinda took me by surprise, since this lady has always been nice to me. I told her, "I'm sorry ma'am, but I'm kinda in a hurry, and I need to get going. Please ask the employee of this store to help you, or come into my store tomorrow if you insist on me helping you." She then gave me a look that could kill, and I kindly walked away. The next day I come into work to the sight of this lady screaming at my manager. She demanded that he fire me because I was very rude to her and refused to help her. My manager called me over and asked me to explain what happened. I told my manager about the incident at the other store. My manager then looked at the lady and said, "I'm sorry ma'am, but my employee is not obligated to help you at other stores or if he's off the clock. This employee has a good reputation in this store and he would never be so rude to customers." The lady got as red as a tomato and then angrily stormed out of the store. Both my manager and I thought that was it with her, but nope. A few hours later, she comes back into the store with every single product I had sold her, and she demanded a refund. She yelled at my manager,
"I refuse to support a store with such a bad customer service."
My manager then kindly tried to explain that a refund would not be possible, since store policy clearly stated that all refunds may only happen within 30 days of an unopened state, or if the product is faulty. But since most of our products are quite expensive, most of the faulty products get sent in for service and not refunded. The woman kept screaming at my manager and demanded a refund, but without luck. After about 10 minutes of screaming, my manager called security to escort the lady out of the store. We all thought we were done with her, but again, nope. After a bit, she came back in with 2 police officers, pretending she got assaulted by security. We kindly explained to the officers what had happened. The officers looked very annoyed at the lady, and one of the officers looked at the lady and said, "Ma'am, you're gonna need to come with us." The officers escorted the lady out of the store, and I haven't seen her since. It only takes one incident for a reputation to be ruined. It seems like this lady had a pretty good reputation with the store, as a friendly customer that didn't really bother anyone. It's only until her entitlement got the better of her. You could understand if this woman perhaps got confused, was in the different store with the electronics and perhaps thought they worked there now, but even after they explained they didn't work there anymore, she still demanded his services. I'm pretty sure if he walked up to her and just asked for free money, she would be taken aback and would think it's pretty rude. Well, it's the same thing if she's basically asking him to work for free. This fan-submitted story was called Wannabe Novelist Imposes His Novel to Class. A little backstory. In my first 3 years of college, I was in a course that is basically composed of languages, English and 1 out of the 3 option languages, Spanish, French and German, and company-related subjects, from marketing to investigation methods. Also, I am Portuguese, and so is the teacher in question. One of the subjects I had in my first year of college was basically a more profound study of the Portuguese language, from grammar to language rules, and the teacher, let's call him T, was a piece of work. Not only was he peculiar, but also narcissistic with entitlement sprinkles. He always had this smug grin on his face. Possibly the thing that made me hate him even more. On one day, we all knew we'd have quite a hard time with this man. He'd always be on a spiel about how we all misspell tons of words, always with that grin and a condescending tone. But there was one thing that made him really an entitled person. One class, T showed up and stated,
"You will need to read this novel for class during this semester. The writer is pretty good."
He then showed the book, and I remember the cover, but I will completely forget the title and the name of the author. It was a bit too long to remember. He then said that because it was really difficult to find it online, and even if we did it would be too expensive, he advised buying it from him, since he had many volumes, for €10. So the entire class did buy the books from T, but some of us, including me, already saw some red flags about it. The novel was boring as heck. It was about a Portuguese guy that got on a trip with other youngsters of other nationalities and got laid with every single girl on the trip. I love books, and I love reading, and that was possibly the first book I wanted to burn after reading the first pages. Luckily, I wasn't the only one, as only a few reached halfway of the darn thing. One day, we were gathered in the university snack bar, talking about stuff when the novel popped into conversation. We were all complaining about how boring and horrible it was when an older colleague, let's call her Kat, got on her laptop to figure out who was the author of such a horrible thing. A few minutes passed, and her jaw dropped. Guys, the name you see on the cover is an alias." She then turned the laptop to us, and there we saw, on a web page, there was the photograph of T, with his real name and the alias underneath it. So pretty much the guy imposed his novel on us. We got on his class and Kat asked T if he was indeed the writer of the novel. He admitted he was, with his constant, smug grin.
"Why yes, in fact that story is inspired by my own youth."
When he said that, I internally gagged. The semester went on, with us having to do a presentation with anything in the novel, from a country to a location to even a tradition from one of the nationalities seen in it. And the exam was what broke the camel's back. The exam was pretty much 20% of the actual class subject and 80% about the novel, and most of us were able to pass with the minimal grade. Fortunately, this ends great because karma bites back hard. We were all one day in English class when T knocks on the door and peeks in. One thing I noticed immediately was that the smug grin was missing. "T, do you need anything?" Looks at us.
"How many of you bought the novel?"
We looked amongst each other and raised our hands. The moment that happened, T paid us each €10 and told us to return the novels to him. I guess it was a good thing I didn't burn it down, eh? And later on I heard that someone actually complained to the head teacher of the course about him. She gave him an earful about it and he was forced to return the money. The next semester we had another teacher in that class. I haven't seen T ever since. Not sure if he was suspended or fired, but good riddance. I feel like it's pretty dodgy to use your power as a teacher to force your students to buy your product, your book or your study course or whatever it is. And I know it happens because it happened to me. I don't know why the school basically enforced it to happen that way. Maybe they're desperate for teachers, but it just feels like the teacher's trying to make an extra buck, and it's never as good as whatever professional course you could be buying online somewhere else. They're either a control freak, or they're trying to profit off their students who don't have any other choice. I don't think it's immoral, it just makes your students feel really uncomfortable and bitter towards you. This story was called, I Got Fired. One day when I was in college, a teacher for a 3-hour class took a leave. My classmates said she posted it on Facebook, but I was one of those unlucky individuals who hate social media and failed to get the notice. Now I am at school too early and have nothing to do for the next 3 hours. I decided to go to a nearby mall. Common rule was they are not allowed to let students come in during school days if they are wearing our school uniform. So I took off my school uniform and wore just my plain white t-shirt, black pants and dress shoes. The mall will open in about 15 minutes, so I just stood by the entrance and wait for it to open. A guard approached me and told me I could use the employee entrance. I thought she just allowed me as an exception because it was rather hot that day and I was visibly melting under the sun, so I thanked her and entered through the side. It's my first time entering through the employee entrance, and so I was looking around and a little lost where to go next. A staff person approached me angrily. I was not really attentive because I was caught off guard, but I think she was a manager of some sorts based on her uniform.
You're late! How many times do I have to tell you guys to come on time?
I'm sorry, ma'am, but She immediately cuts me off to continue her rant.
Reasons! What excuse are you going to tell me now? And you think you can sneak in again without me noticing, huh?
But, ma'am.
But, no more buts. You have just been here a few days and you already got me in so much trouble. Go punch in your card now, quick, or I'll get you fired this instant.
Me shuffling my bag, reaching for my school ID, hoping to show it to her instead.
Time card? Are you deaf or just stupid? Don't tell me you forgot it again. You know what? You're fired. Get your face off here. You're fired.
I turned back and walked away. It's my fault because I entered the wrong side, but that was a really scary experience. It had been a wake-up call for me to work hard to finish my degree. I don't want to end up in that kind of situation if I was an actual employee. I don't know if she actually had the power to fire a subordinate like that, but the way she screams, I think she actually can. Up to this day, I don't know if she even realized I was not even an employee in the mall. I hope the poor guy who was supposed to be the target of her anger did not get into so much trouble because of my stupidity. Wouldn't you have to be a pretty bad manager to not even know who the real employees are? Granted, she thought he was supposedly there for only a few days, but wouldn't a new employee be even more reason to pay close attention to them? The coincidental thing about this I Don't Work Here Lady story is, in the end, either way they didn't work there. If you'd like your story to be narrated by me, don't forget to visit the subreddit r/VoiceyHere, link below. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe if you'd like to see more. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.